Hello, my name is Melissa Briars, and today I'm going to be talking about my Culture of Character project done through my internship at Wabanzi Valley High School. The objectives of this presentation is to give an overview of the culture audit that I had done during my internship, specifically with Project 5, show data that led to action steps that I took, detail my action plan to improve the culture of character and character education at Wabanzi Valley High School, detail my implementation steps, and discuss the evaluation process that I took to evaluate the plan and to make any changes necessary moving forward. There's kind of two parts to this project summary. So when I talk about part one and part two, you kind of know what I'm talking about there. One of the SIP goals of Wabanzi Valley High School for the past couple years was to foster a community of readers. I'll talk more about the data behind that moving forward, but it was something that as a building and as a district, we really saw was lacking with our students, that students were not reading. Both for academic purposes, but more importantly for pleasure purposes. We saw a steep decline with our high school students on reading, building a community of readers, reading for pleasure, reading for fun, reading things that they are interested in. So that's kind of part one of this Culture of Character project. The second part still deals with reading, but more specifically, the lack of equity. And diverse text that we saw within our building. I included the Equity and Inclusion District 204 mission here. It says we pledge to foster educational equity for all students by actively identifying and removing any barriers, by ensuring that all policies, practices, programs, and procedures support and affirm each student. And what we saw is that as a building, and specifically as an English department, Wabanzi Valley was not ensuring that their practices and our policies and basically the content we were using really did support and affirm each student. So, the second part of my Culture of Character project is addressing those equity and inclusion concerns. So, a little bit of context here. I did do my internship at Wabanzi Valley High School. I've been teaching there for the past 11 years. Currently, my role has somewhat changed. I was a full time English teacher, teaching a variety of courses in that department. But starting in the spring of 2020, I was taken on as a point four instructional technology coordinator. So part of my day, I'm doing that work, working with teachers, kind of playing that coach or mentor role. And then the rest of my day, I am still teaching 3 English classes. So Avanzi Valley High School is a very diverse school, serving primarily Naperville and Aurora areas. As you can see there, we do have a little bit of an issue with chronic absenteeism. We are very racially, ethnic, and diverse, as well as many different religions, ethnicities, so on and so forth. We serve 21% low income students. We have 11% with IEPs, 1% homeless, and 3% English learners. So when I was thinking about culture of character and building character education, I was really thinking, how do we reach all of these different students? And specifically, because both of my goals here and my action plans deal with reading, what I noticed was the books we were exposing students to was not reaching that diverse population. We were not serving them windows and mirrors, so to speak, into the world by viewing other cultures, other ethnicities, other races, and just authors from around the world. And we felt like that was creating some character barriers for them, that they were not building certain skills, life skills that they needed, specifically with empathy and building relationships, things of that nature. So, one data point that I really looked to was the 5 essential survey. This is something that the last survey we did was in spring of 2020. So, this feedback is going to be from there. That we just saw that there were some areas of school culture that could really be improved. We had average implementation when it comes to effective leader, and that specifically surrounding school culture with leadership. So we just felt like that was definitely an area. As you can see, this kind of indicator to the right side of the screen, we definitely want to get more into that dark blue area, having effective leaders. And part of my action steps today with culture of character is definitely building those character skills or those character competencies in our teachers so that they can be then effective leaders for their students. Again, we had average implementation when it came to program coherence. I'm specifically today going to be talking about our reading programs and our reading initiatives and our diversity and equity initiatives. And when it comes to Waubonsie Valley High School, we are very much, I feel, known for starting a program, starting an initiative, and not necessarily following through with it, evaluating it effectively, measuring the data from it effectively. And I feel that as a leader now, that is something that with culture of character, it cannot just be, let's try this one thing, see if it sticks, if not, move on. It needs to be something that when looking at a change model, you're constantly evaluating, constantly looking back at what the data is telling you, and really making steps to better the program. So that is something that I will be talking about today as well. Teacher principal trust also had average implementation. I found this interesting considering I definitely personally feel that that my principal trusts me and I trust my principal. But you could see that not all teachers feel that way. And I think part of that has to do with this last data point about programs coming and going so often. And then finally, teacher influence. I found this really concerning too. Less implementation in terms of performance for teacher influence. And I think part of that definitely has to do with the face of teachers in this building. We, like I talked about, serve such a diverse population, yet our teachers are not diverse. They are mostly white, mostly female. And when students don't see themselves in the leaders in front of them, there's definitely, the research shows there's a lack of connection there. There's a lack of buy-in, and it definitely affects their self-confidence. So this brought me to like the problem, right? What are we seeing here? Looking at that data, looking at what teachers were telling us, and what we are seeing in our own classrooms, we have a problem with reading. On an academic level, students are just not reading. They're not reading at the volume that they used to read in elementary and even in middle school. And we do know the research tells us that reading is the foundation for all disciplines. Reading does not just affect how you do in an English course, it affects how you do in a geography course, how you would do in a bio course, how you would do in a math course. Reading really is the foundation here. And at the high school level, it's kind of like we're trying to play catch up with some of those academic sides of reading. But more importantly, with this project, what I was seeing is that reading is also affecting students, or the lack of reading, I should say, on a socio-emotional level. So we're looking at those SEL indicators and also that character education level. Two main areas I want to talk about here with this. Students need that connection. They need that connection to something that they have read, that they have liked, to have connection to characters, to people other than themselves, to see themselves in a character, whether it's a mirror or see somebody else, right? A different perspective can definitely build empathy in that student. Students, we have seen, were lacking that empathy and perspective because the texts that we were exposing them to were pretty outdated. We have a lot of novels in our English department, specifically in the class that I teach, that, for lack of better phrasing, are written by dead white men. And that is not providing an accurate picture for students of who are our influential authors of today in 2021. We have very great wide range, of racially diverse, ethnically diverse authors that we just weren't showing in our classrooms. So a couple, I wanted to use some research to back this up. Stephen Krashen in The Power of Reading stated the single factor most strongly associated with reading achievement, more than socioeconomic status or any instructional approach, is independent reading. So that's where we knew we had to start. We needed to give students the choice and the voice to choose a book that they wanted to choose and independently read in our courses to start building those connections, seeing new perspectives, and building some empathy. John Guthrie and Donna Alverman in Engaged Reading wrote, for students of equal ability, so students that can academically perform at the same level, the more avid reader will receive higher grades in all subjects than the less avid reader. And I know this is more of an academic side that I'm quoting here, and I know that this is a project about building character, but think about what that does for your average student. We know that there is confidence tied to ability in the classroom. And the more confident a student is, the more willing they are to take risks. The more willing they are to believe that they can achieve better. We really do want that character education to include that sense of confidence building, because it really does help them in all levels of life. So, some things like I've already talked about with the power of reading, yes, it does help your analytical skills, your focus and concentration, mental stimulation, knowledge, vocab, memory, writing. This definitely reminds me of kind of the intellectual indicators that Jubilee references. But also, you're looking at a lot of emotional character, culture of character, um, levels or skills that are being built: empathy, stress reduction, conversational skills, sleep, creativity, obviously a form of entertainment. And it also shows that those that read more have better health and a longer lifespan. So, we had this huge conversation at my instructional leadership team about the things that kids are missing the most when it comes to this post-pandemic world that we are navigating coming up. And this definitely connects. Yes, are there going to be gaps academically? Absolutely. But I think what we need to focus on more is there's gaps with them on an emotional and mental level that we need to address first. They were stripped of their ability to have conversations in the classrooms and be creative with one another. And we need to find ways, and I think through this project, I really believe that happened. So, just an interesting infographic, something that I think is important that you can share with teachers as you are running teachers through this program, training teachers, but also students too. Just what 20 minutes of reading could do a night for a student. A student A reads 20 minutes. That's 1.8 million words. Student B 5 minutes. That's 282,000 words, and C reads 1 minute, that's 8,000 words. And then also, the percentile they are in as compared to their peers. I really liked this quote by Donalyn Miller. She said, the best way to improve children's reading test scores: provided access to books, encourage free choice, give children time to read, and actively support their reading development at school and home. No test prep packet or computer program can ever replace what high volume, high interest reading and strong reading communities already do. So a couple things that that stand out to me in this quote: free choice, at school and high interest. You have to give students a choice with their books. I think the one book fits all program no longer works in our schools, at least not all year long. You need to give students that choice. You need to give students that time at school. We know that high school students have commitments at home that are unavoidable. Some of them are working, some of them are caregivers, taking care of parents, supporting parents, and as well as siblings. And then also high interest. We have adopted a curriculum that at one point in time worked, that was cutting edge, reading some of these what we call American classics. And while there is still value there in terms of building technical skills with reading, what we are lacking by sticking to that one size fits all book is the student piece, their interest level, their engagement. Um, a lot of times, those classics do not reflect the lives students are living today. So you need to provide high interest, relevant, and modern text for students. Another infographic on this slide that just shows you what happens when only 10 minutes a day is added to a student's reading. Again, something that you can show as research to your teachers as you are training them on this program. This is also something I showed to my students as well, just how much it can help them in many areas, both mostly academically on this slide. But again, don't forget where you have those academic growths, you're also seeing a boost in a lot of those character traits we want to build in students of confidence, empathy, and perspective. So it's not just reading, right? There's a lot that goes into this. Reading is not just ingesting words on a page. I always say to my students, practice makes perfect. The more you read, the more you will understand. The faster you will understand. The faster you will read. I just snapped a couple of these pictures. This first one, obviously pre-pandemic there. But when you give students that time to actually do it and don't just say, oh, reading is homework, right? That you model for them that this is the culture of the school, that students are reading alongside their teachers who are reading with them. That shows them that the more you do it, the better you will get and the easier it'll get. So this kind of gets us to, we know why we don't read, but what can we do about it? What is my action plan in order to address this character building initiative? Before I get to that, we need to talk about that part 2, right? Because this project, I'm kind of addressing 2 main things here. And the second part is the equity initiative. The fact that we have a problem with not just how often we're letting students read in the classroom, giving students choice and volume reading, but the fact that we're not giving them diverse texts. On an academic level, students are not being exposed to engaging texts featuring diverse authors, perspectives, and cultures. On a socio-emotional or character education level, they are lacking the ability to build relationships with characters, aka peers, that are from a different culture, are from a different religion, ethnicity, language, etc. And then also, again, students lacking empathy and perspective. So again, always going back to the research, Jennifer Gonzalez, who runs the website Cult of Pedagogy, she's amazing. She says the classroom needs to be a space for students to affirm and celebrate and validate who they are so that they know they are enough, so that they know they are brilliant and excellent and beautiful, because society doesn't tell them that all the time, tell us that all the time. What a powerful quote. I think that that needs to happen in the classroom. They need to be affirmed and celebrated. And currently, what we're seeing at Waubonsie is we can do more there, so that students do know how brilliant they are, that they're seeing themselves reflected in the books we put in front of them. And then in the book Choice Matters, Equity and Literacy Achievement. It's quoted, when individuals are allowed to affirm their sense of autonomy through choice, they experience enhanced motivation, persistence, performance, and production. And this just really affirms for me this work that we're doing and how it connects to culture of character, right? Motivation, persistence, performance, production. Those are those life skills, those soft skills, those non academic skills that are so needed beyond just a score in a classroom, right? And then Zaretta Hammond, actually a text I read during my 536 class in this program, wrote, for culturally and linguistically diverse students, their opportunities to develop habits of mind and cognitive capacities are limited or non existent because of their educational inequity. The result is their cognitive growth is stunted, leaving them dependent learners, unable to work to their full potential. That's a very eye opening, sobering quote for sure. The fact that their opportunities are so limited or non existent that they're essentially stunted, right? They don't get that um, character skill of independence and confidence, resiliency that we often see in their white counterparts. So, what's my action plan? I went through the two areas, the issues with, student choice with novels, but then also the lack of equity. So, there's two parts to this. The first part of my action plan was to include a student novel choice unit where students were, through vetted text, given a robust list of relevant, modern, accessible, reading level appropriate novels to choose from by a very diverse um, group of authors. And then part two is equity training happening at our school. I worked specifically with Jen Rowe, our equity director, during this internship, part of my internship through District 204. She is our equity director, and I worked with her on creating a 6-part training program for teachers to be exposed to obviously the power of infusing equitable, inclusive, and diverse learning opportunities in the classroom. That is happening by department. And luckily enough, the English department was the first department up just because of their volume of exposure to text. So here's our part one plan and then also evaluation and feedback. So where is this happening? What did we do first? First, we kind of looked at our courses and said it makes most sense to focus on English, health, and American history, right? So we looked at the English classroom and we said we need to include that choice novel unit. We need to be doing modeling along with the students so that they see the importance that their teacher places on it, and also give time for independent reading. Health also included an independent reading unit, and in American history, reading primary source documents in class, those more relevant texts, especially from, when we're looking at diversity, right, of those primary sources that they are using in that course. And then there's a lot of things that really every discipline could do to reinforce reading. Use it as a bell ringer, right? 5 minutes, pull out your independent reading novel and do a little bit of silent reading. Build a community of readers. We created, there's a link here, hopefully you should be able to access it, where teachers can make recommendations on books, students can make recommendations on books, personal preference based on genre. And I think that really helps kind of build that community there. Like I said, teacher modeling reading, fluency in monitoring comprehension, close reading in class, and then time to read. Time. If anything, any new initiative is to be done well, you need to dedicate the time. I wanted to share an example of our choice novel unit text. These were our sophomore level texts that we gave from a wide variety of authors. Um, a lot of different cultures displayed in these texts, a lot of different areas of the world. A lot of these were not originally written in English, which I think is really cool, and it kind of has something for everyone. We previewed all these texts beforehand and kind of gave students a little snapshot of the story and the themes. And then students were able to choose from here, and they could choose to buy their own book. If they didn't want to buy it, the school did provide them a loaned copy for free. And then at the end of that choice novel unit, we did give a survey to students for feedback. What did you like? What did you not like? Were you given enough time to read in class? Um, you know what do you feel you most improved on? This is not something that you would necessarily do all year long, is give students a choice, but we really want to stress swapping out, right? One book that you've always done for this choice unit. And then we got some really great feedback. This is all student feedback. If I had a little bit more time last year, I would have, um, done some more teacher feedback. But you could see here through the students just how great it really was. I like it because it gives me a chance to settle into class and not rush into things like other classes, because many days of the week during this unit, we just let them start by reading their book. I like it because I get to read whatever I want. It's actually kind of fun. I find it beneficial because I do not always have time to read outside of school because of homework, but with 5 to 10 minutes, I'm able to read. Even though I do not read much, I still enjoy the short time to read every day. I really enjoy having a little independent reading time at the start of the period. It's a little break where I can sit back and relax while reading. Gets rid of my stress and helps me get focused for what we're doing next. When we talk about character building, look at that. Reducing stress, helping them get focused, helping them relax, how much more productive they would be, throughout the day if this was kind of the culture of their everyday. Can you imagine if this is the culture of every single class? Um, just how much more successful and happy the students would be. Just a few more quotes. I'm not going to read, all of them, but again, it's great. I love reading, and it's good to have independent reading time because I don't always have time to read at home. Definitely don't think it is a waste of time. Students getting drawn more and more into their book, which definitely, is getting us to that empathy, building empathy among students. This was just part of their project. At the end, they had a choice to kind of do a back and forth with me about a passage that they found very profound or interesting. And this one student had read an amazing novel called A Thousand Splendid Suns about the themes were very heavy. It was about sexism, misogyny, and abuse from the female perspective in Afghanistan. And just her response, I mean, this is a student that is usually generally pretty quiet. So I wanted to give them the opportunity to share their voice, um, in written format. But just talking about how, she says, she takes for granted the activities that I can partake in by myself without approval of consent from a man. This story has made me more aware of struggles that women across the globe face every day. It has made me grateful for the freedoms I'm granted. Finally, it has made me want to fight for equality for all women and make others around me more aware of their struggles. Like, that is character education in a nutshell. That is instilling virtues through this reading program. Um, I wrote back to her. You can see my response here, but it's just so powerful to see, not only is she quoting the text and really engaging with the reading, but she's reflecting, right? And that reflection piece is made so clear here. Another project that we did that really tied to fostering a culture of character was giving students or collecting from students thematic topics that they could write about and journal about throughout the unit. And these were all students came up with all of these. And all of these, I think, lend themselves to a specific character virtue. Um, you know, Overcoming challenges, finding self worth and self development, finding identity, sacrifice and struggle, growth, loyalty, love, actions and consequences. I'm also reminded here of the castle competencies with SEL. There's just very heavy topics, but also topics where students can learn and grow from, and really kind of build that character within themselves, right? To make connections to such large topics. So then there's the part two plan of feedback. So remember, this is equity training for teachers. Currently at the district level, they have started building equity teams. Each building will support a building equity team. The building team will have a designated team member. They attend a monthly meeting with the executive director of educational equity. That's Jen Rowe, who I met with several times during this internship, and also representatives from the district level equity team. The focus is on creating a district wide common culture with the focus on equity, support systemic change, create more collaborative learning community, and then train, support, and guide buildings in their work to provide inclusivity in their classrooms. That are actively engaged in effective anti-racist education. So what does that mean for us? What did that mean for WVHS, and where did we go from here? So part of the things that we knew needed to happen in order for that mission, that vision at the district level to take place is we needed to provide, the district needed to provide funds for an updated book room. That's slowly but surely taking place. In order to do that curriculum text swap, right? It's not about rewriting all of the curriculum. It's about picking a unit and flipping it out for a more inclusive unit, a more diverse text-based unit like the one I just outlined. And then specifically what I worked with in my internship for the Culture of Character project was that the 6-part equity training with the director. And that's what I'm going to overview here. So a few things had to take place before it got to where I jumped in. You had to take a look at the data, right? If you're looking at the change model here and diagnose what the problem was, right? The data says that inclusivity, equitable opportunities for students to engage with diverse content, text, etc. Just obviously does amazing things for the achievement gap, for student confidence, for student growth in all areas, specifically with our minority subgroups. And the problem is we're not doing that, right? We are not giving them those opportunities. And so our goal, which you could see the district came up with their goal or their mission and vision, but the gap came at step 4 there, and that's the plan. And that's where I worked specifically in my internship with Jen Rowe to create a plan, starting with teachers, because I think any good plan starts with training teachers first. They need to know the why, the how, the where, the when, in order for it to come to students. Rolling it out, tracking it, evaluating it, and then obviously including ongoing support, whether that's PD, and making adjustments to that plan. So when it came to the equity training, kind of 5 things came to mind. We knew we were going to begin at the high school level. We were going to start with the English department just because they had the most exposure to text, and texts are a great way to start building some access to diverse voices. And then from there, Jen Rowe is going to work department by department. I specifically worked with the first one with English, and then I believe next they were going to go to the social studies department, science, math, and then some of the specials as well. The focus was not on, like I said, on a curriculum rewrite, but more of a curriculum and culture shift. We wanted to provide resources and training for discussions regarding equity, or I should say the lack of equity in our social context, political context, exposing both teachers, like I said first, and then students to more diverse voices, and hopefully, getting more engagement from all students, seeing that this is something we value as a school community and a school culture. So what we did is we came up with a professional learning series. It was 6 parts. We started and there's resources included in each of these. I've linked a guiding document there if you'd like to look. But we started with an introduction. Then we talked about teaching with an equity lens, windows and mirrors for all. We looked at some case studies, what this means for academic success, and then next steps. Again, I'm not going to go through this entire guiding document, but it is linked there if you want to see kind of that 6-part series. Every member of the English team was on these meetings, led by myself, my department chair, and the equity director. And it just led to great conversations, and really just kind of having some of those difficult conversations that we knew needed to be had if we were ever going to bridge those difficult conversations for students. These next couple slides, one of the discussions we had was, about culturally responsive teaching and those standards. This is all taken from Stand for Children, Illinois. There are 8 CRT standards, and I wanted to just briefly touch on them because this is where I knew it really connected to that culture of character project. By instilling some CRT into our school, we are teaching self-awareness and a relationship to others. We are talking about systems of oppression, right? The differences between racism, prejudice, discrimination. Really valuing students as individuals, students as co-creators, leveraging student advocacy, family and community collaboration, content selection and curriculum, and student representation in the learning environment. So those definitely connect not just to CASTLE, which is what the school has adopted for SEL, but also Jubilee as well. At the end of those 6 trainings, there was a survey that we gave out to get teacher feedback on, what changes, what do you need more information on, more resources, more training. Some recommendations, right off the bat is that they did like that they were providing this training for teachers first. It's probably going to take a whole year to roll this out department by department. And they were asking if there is some time embedded into these trainings to work with teachers in other departments to do some cross-curricular work. How powerful it would be to look at our diverse texts in an English class, but then connect them to, some history lessons and some things that are happening in another content or course. And then also, they did ask for a little bit more modeling or strategies to model having those difficult conversations with students, which I think is really powerful moving forward when next year we do go into that student rollout that just hasn't happened yet. Finally, I went to the Jubilee Center when I was creating this just to kind of make those connections to character education. Everything I've talked about today with the student choice novel obviously totally relates to those skills of student choice and voice, right, and improving representation among the things that we teach with our students. I think it definitely instills a level of integrity among teachers, right, that they are really being honest and reflective in their choices of what they put in front of students, right, and really valuing that through their work. Building compassion, building community awareness. I've talked a lot about how these programs build confidence, and they all have some measure of reflection in there, both for teachers and students. Those student voices at the end of part 1 and their feedback just really shows some great honest reflection that what we are doing is headed in the right direction for sure. That is it from me. Thank you so much. If you have any questions, there's my work email there. Character education, culture of character, it's not a buzzword. It is not something that is a fad. Hopefully, in 10, 20, 30 years from now, we are still talking about this, not just as one segment or one subtopic of education, but it really is education. You can't teach students content. You can't teach students to care about the academic side of school if you don't first teach them to care about themselves and about their community of peers and about one another. So, this is really important work, and I appreciate you taking the time to listen. And then I just have my references. Thank you so much.